Hi, how are we doing? This is Darren from Targa. It is currently December 2024. It's a bit windy outside and there may be some background noise, so apologies in advance for that. The reason I'm mentioning the date though is that some of the things that I'm going to be showing you today may change between now and when you finally get to see this video. We're going to be looking at the Voiceflow interface and a chatbot in conjunction with the targaweb.com website, which of course may also have changed by the time you see this video. Okay, now let's get started. From this menu, there is an integration tool. And this was the subject of the video from a couple of weeks ago, where we were showing how these kind of options could control what you see in your chatbot from the way of colors and the avatar image and so forth. Today, I want to show you how you can use CSS to override some of those settings or have more control over them, and also how you can apply a call to your CSS file using this code that I'm highlighting here. If you're not familiar with this code, it's actually JavaScript, and Voiceflow creates this for you. So if you're not code savvy, that doesn't matter at all. I don't personally understand all of the lines of this code. I don't need to, and you don't either. So what I'm going to do here is show you how this code is applied to the targaweb.com website and how we can add a line of code to that script tag in order to pull a separate CSS file. So first things first, this is the Targa website, and you can see from the way that this chatbot down here is displayed that I think in the context of the overall page design, it doesn't jump out at you, but it's still visible. However, if the user's down at the bottom of the page and that chatbot is kind of sitting over the footer, because the footer image is actually quite dark in this context, and maybe for yourself, for some of your clients, you might find that the chatbot is not as visible as you'd like it to be. So one of the things I wanted to do was find out how I could change this this bubble to make it more visible. I also wanted to see how the chatbot could be controlled from the perspective of some of these messages that it displays and the user input, the things that I type in myself. And there's also these buttons. So what kind of control could I have over these? You might ask, well, why do I want to do that? Sometimes it's just to have a little bit more customization from a branding perspective. There might be some things that you want to make more visible though. For people with impaired vision. Maybe it's just vanity, style, whatever. But the purpose of this video is to show you how you can actually do some of this. One other thing that I'd like to show you here is that at the top of the chatbot, you can see that the color I've used is the same color as this band. Now, of course, I could have chosen a different color. In this instance, I didn't, but what I'm going to do with the revision to this styling is to apply a border around the chatbot so you can see the edges more clearly. So how do we do this? Now, in the Voiceflow interface, we have this integration menu. Last time, or certainly in a previous video, we spent some time here going through some of these options to show how these things here could control some of these things here. Now, what I want to do today is focus on this and how we apply this to a website and how we can make a couple of changes to this to include a call to a CSS file, but all will be revealed. So what we do is we apply that to the website as such. Now, this is that exact same tag. If you're wondering how this actually applies to the website, in my case, I code websites using PHP, and this particular file is simply what I would call an include. And this is applied to the footer file. And because this is applied to the footer, that means that I only have to apply this tag once to the website, and thereafter every single page will display the chatbot. Now, as stated, Voiceflow produces this tag for you, and this is unique to your particular chatbot. If you build other chatbots for other people, then they will also have their own unique tag. Okay, so there are parts of this, such as this piece here, the project ID, which will be unique to your particular chatbot. Let's go back to the website and just have a look to see how the chatbot currently looks. As a reminder, we've got this bar at the top, which is the same color as the top of the chatbot. We've got a few other things which I would actually like to remove or suppress. For example, this. I don't see any purpose in that for my benefit anyway. I want to restyle the buttons. There may be some other things which we find along the way, which I'll make some changes to and show you how I do that. I'm viewing this in Chrome, and then I'm sure that there may be some people who are watching this and are quite familiar with what I'm about to show you, and some who are not, so please bear with me. Now, I want to have a look to see how the styling of these particular elements are controlled. So what I'll do is I can highlight something, right click on it, and then hit this inspect tab. Okay. Right, now within Chrome, we have these tools which we can experiment with. For example, if I take the color of the button, or at least the content on the button, we can see that by dragging these styling elements around, we can change the color of them. I can do something equally ghastly with the color of the background. Right, but it's important to remember here that what we are doing by using these tools within Chrome is only affecting the way that this chatbot looks to us at this particular time. We can change other elements too. Okay, but if we refresh, all of those changes will revert to their original setting. Now, this is important to remember because we are experimenting with how this chatbot looks by using the tools which Chrome provides us with. And anybody else looking at your chatbot will not be seeing these same changes. Okay, so this is a safe place to experiment with. Have some fun with it if you want, but obviously there is something important with this that we want to actually make use of. Now, as we can hover around here and have this middle panel highlight the different elements on the page, we can also see that each of these elements has got a class reference and in some cases a number of different classes which applies to them. And over this side, this is where the definitions or the styling definitions within the class are defined. Now, not all of these elements have got classes. I'll give you an example. If you look at this particular paragraph here, in the middle section, I'll just show you that if I just pop some nonsense into here, you can see that the same nonsense applies to the chatbot, but the content, these words, are applied to a paragraph tag, this p tag here. This is probably one of the most common elements within HTML. But unlike the divs and the spans and other elements on this page, this p tag has not got a class applied to it. You can see that it just opens and closes. Now, this is an important thing for you to remember, because within Voiceflow, the styling elements, the CSS classes, are applied to the chatbot. It does it for you. You don't need to understand how that works. But what you do need to understand is that if you wanted, for example, to this paragraph tag to apply a class, well, you don't, unlike when you're designing your own website, you don't have the ability to apply a class to it. But what you can do is change how these elements are controlled by the respective classes. Now, if that doesn't make sense right now, hopefully it will do in a minute. So let's go and have a look at some more buttons. If I highlight button number 3 and hit the inspect, you can see that this element here gets highlighted. And as I drag my mouse around in this middle section, you can see on the left side of the screen that different buttons have been highlighted by me doing this. Now, if I want to change how these buttons look, I can take this CSS definition, or the class, copy and paste it into here. Now, what is this? This is a separate file which I set up. I've called it anyway, vfcss.css. VF simply for voice flow. I could have called this anything. I could have named it after my dog if I wanted to, but the point is that this is a separate file, and this is the content of that style sheet, that CSS class that we saw in Chrome. So if we return to Chrome and have a look at the colors that we're using on this on these buttons, I'm going to choose something quite crazy so we can see the difference. I'm going to go for yellow content, and we're going to change the background to something. Actually, well, I don't like the look of that, but I think for the purpose of the demonstration, this will work. Okay, and let's have a look at the border. All right, if I want to change the border to something like like a thicker 2-pixel border or something, see the changes down here. I could then copy those changes, go back to my file, and you can see here that this original line here for the color has now been changed to what we changed it to in Chrome. We also changed the background color from this to this. Now, this was the original, you might remember. This is something that we've edited. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of this one because we don't need it, and save the file. Now, before we can get this file to have any impact on our chatbot, we need to call it. Now, you remember we had this script tag that Voiceflow provided. Now, we need to have within this a means of calling this CSS file. Now, I'm quite happy to help you with this one if you can't follow it yourself. But what I've done here, I'm just going to magically bring this into view. let's just compare these two pieces of JavaScript. Again, remember, you don't need to understand JavaScript to do this. Right, this entire tag was how this tag began life. But all I've done is I've added this line to it. And there's a couple of subtle changes around that line. But the file name vfcss.css represents this. So what's going to happen is that if I use this version of the tag instead of this version of the tag, the chatbot will start referencing whatever we've got in this CSS file. Now, I'm just, for simplicity anyway, I'm just going to highlight this and drag this into between these comments. And this means that anything within these comments cannot be seen by the browser. Basically, I've just made that particular piece inactive. Okay, so let's return to Chrome to see if those changes have made any difference. Yes. Okay, now unlike previously when we were messing around with the definitions over here, anybody else viewing this chatbot will now see those ghastly colors on the button. So I don't want this to be live for too long, but you can see here that these are the changes. You can also see though that over on the far right of the page, of the screen I mean, there's a reference to vfcss.css. So this file now is using these definitions that we've amended. You can also see here that the original Voiceflow set definitions are still in place. Now, if I was to uncheck this yellow color for the fonts, you can see that the Voiceflow definition, which had been crossed out, now becomes active, and therefore the buttons over here have got blue text. We can do the same with the background color. If I take this ghastly brown background color off, you can see that the Voiceflow preset is now in place. Now this is important because if anything happens to your chatbot and you think, oh heck, what have I done? You are only going to be making these changes to your own CSS file. So if anything happens, you can simply go to your file and remove whatever. In fact, you can take the whole lot out and just completely reset back to the original Voiceflow thing if you want. Okay, so in principle, that is how we can override some of the Voiceflow settings. Now, I can't go through with this single video anyway. I can't go through each and every change that I made on the Targa Web chatbot itself, but I'll show you how some of these changes have been applied. Just very quickly going through some of these from top to bottom. Remember that anything that's green is not seen by the browser. Okay, so these are simply comments, literally comments. It's what you call commenting out. So I've left little notes for myself, basically. That class here is for the buttons. This is for buttons when you hover over them, and you can see here that the same class there is exactly the same there, but by applying hover, the word hover, after a colon, we can change the background color from this to this. I'll show you how this applies in reality in a moment. Okay, so now that I've loaded that updated CSS file onto the live platform, which is subsequently been called by that script tag that I showed you a few minutes ago, you can see that quite a lot has changed within the chatbot. You can see how I've styled these buttons to not only look like they do by default, but what they do when I hover over them. The background changes very slightly, and also the shadow, the positioning of the shadow and the spread of the shadow changes to give a resemblance of the button actually being depressed when I hover over them. The text content is in a box which I've applied some shading to, and you can see that I've used a darker color up the top left compared to a lighter color down the bottom right. Also the images here, I've changed the size and the shape to show them slightly bigger and with uh, rounded edges as opposed to circular. And those are all controlled from this. Now, when I showed you originally how you could copy and paste from Chrome into this file and then change some of the values of the styling definitions, it's not necessary to change every single one. Really, the only things that we need to include in this file are the things that we want to change. This is actually a good example. So let me show you how this looks in Chrome. This is in relation to, as you'll see here from the comment, the avatar. Now, if I look at that avatar element, you can see that my CSS file, this VF CSS, only contains a couple of lines for that particular definition. The original one is from Voiceflow is here. And the lines that I had in my file, there being only two, are shown as crossed out. That's because they've been overridden in the Voiceflow definition by my own. Okay, let's have a quick look at what else has changed before we close. Now, going back to Chrome, if you go to the top right corner and hit this close button, right, we close the inspection tab. Right, you may recall that whilst I was quite happy with the way that the chatbot bubble appeared in the bottom left-hand corner on a white background, it wasn't so clear when it was on the black background. It was just like a blue, which did not look very good on the dark grey, and it wasn't very visible. So if anybody was to be looking at this page, it's not immediately clear that there's a chatbot tool down the bottom. So what I've done, I've used CSS styling to not only change the color of the bubble, but also to apply a border to it and also change the behavior of the bubble as I hover over it. So you can see here that I've actually created a shadow around it, and I've changed the behavior of that shadow whenever I hover over it, so it looks like the bubble gets depressed. Not in the way of it gets upset, but I think you get the idea. And also by applying a border around the entire box, the chatbot box, you can see that I've got less of a clash between this part of the page and the top of the chatbot. And I think everything else should be quite self-explanatory. There was a couple of other things which you wouldn't have seen yet. So if I was to type in, for example, tell me about your web design packages, we open up this carousel. And the style of this carousel originally didn't have um, a border around it. And I've also changed the behavior of these buttons. So nothing major here, but it's just another example of how we can influence the styling of these elements. So to wrap this up, just remember that what you're not doing here is hacking into the workings of Voiceflow. Voiceflow will provide the necessary elements for your chatbot to work and how it looks. If you want to change any of those, you'll be doing this in the way that I've described in this video at a kind of surface level. Your changes are simply overriding how the browser sees each of the elements within your chatbot. If at all you mess up or you kind of if you lose your way, and we all do from time to time, then you can simply go right back to base and remove everything that you've done or small parts of what you've done, knowing full well that Voiceflow have got you covered. Anyway, I hope this has been of some use to you. If you want any help with some of your CSS, or if you need any assistance with implementing your CSS file with your chatbot, for example, that line of code which gets added to your implementation tag, then please feel free to get in touch and let me know, and I'll see how I can help you. In the meantime, good luck, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.